Hello, Dot Hackers. Welcome to today's topic. We're going to be discussing the 2 additional classes that were added in the World R1. The World R1 consists of 6 main classes that many of you remember, with Twin Blade, Heavy Blade, Blade Master, Long Arm, Heavy Axeman, and Wave Master. But during Legend of the Twilight, we saw a 7th class, the Werewolf class. The Werewolf class is actually a job extension of an existing class called the Knucklemaster. So today we're going to discuss all that we know about Knucklemaster and the Werewolf, the 7th and 8th character class. So when creating a character in the world, you were given 6 main options, which we already discussed. In a later expansion, Knucklemaster became a selectable choice. Whereas the 6 main classes usually had a sword or staff, Knucklemasters didn't have a weapon they would hold, per se. Most of them dealt attack with their fists. And the Werewolf was not a class you could choose, but it was a job extension similar to how Haseo chose Adept Rogue as his primary class, and then he was able to pick, based on points, up to 3 other classes, which we saw as the Twin Blade, Blade Brandier, and the Flick Reaper. The Adept Rogue, by most in the World R2, is more like a jack of all trades and master of none, whereas you pick a class in R2 or R1, and you would be a master of that class if you put all your focus on what your class ability has. But Knucklemaster is a little bit different. It was more like a prerequisite, and you had to unlock Werewolf class. So let's begin. We're going to go to a source, and that source is going to be Dothack Archives Volume 3. So Dothack Archives Volume 3, this is a book that came out in May of 2011 that was published by CyberConnect 2. Over on their website, you could purchase this book. It was a hardback book, and they later released a light edition, which was paperback. And you can even get this digitally on Amazon, Bookwalker, and a few other online book retailers. I happen to purchase my hardback book. I don't have the light edition. It's just a paperback version, but I also have a digital version that was given away for free by a Bookwalker at one point last year. So in this book, on page 223, we have this little list of all the 6 classes and a 7th one that says new. So we see Twin Blade, Heavy Blade, Blade Master, Long Arm, Heavy Axeman, and Wave Master. In the Dothack universe, mind you, I'm not talking about our universe of our timeline. I'm talking about Dothack's timeline. With 2010 and prior, these were the 6 classes you had. And during Dothack Legend of the Twilight, which was 2014 for in-universe, this is when we saw Uka, the Divine Fist. He had the Werewolf class. So sometime between the end of 2010 and before 2014, these 2 new classes were introduced. I don't know when exactly. I've seen some books, doujinshis, where they talk about it, but they never actually give a date when it happened. So the last one on the right, you see number 7, and it says, we're going to use the term that the magazine used, which is Knucklemaster. I believe if you translate this directly, you would get the term pugilist? Pugilist? Yeah, you pronounce it. But anyway, it's basically someone who uses their fists. So if we were to translate the portion on the right, it basically says, newly added class, he fights not only with his bare hands, but also with his knuckles and gloves. A true hand-to-hand combat expert. Also, class changes that are not possible with other classes are possible. It is also a class where you can do this. And right above this, where it says new, there's this portion right here that's cut off. And it says at the very top left, Werewolf. And on the right, obviously it says rare class. Now, what below it says, a rare class that appeared as an advanced class of the Knucklemaster due to the class change system implemented in 2014. So I don't know if they came together, Knucklemaster and Werewolf, in 2014, or if it's just referring to just the Werewolf class. It has various features not found in the normal classes, such as the need for a job change item for the first time to transform into a non-human race and class change. So like I said, that's all in the Dothack Archives Volume 3 books. But we do have other sources where this has come up. So let's look at that right now. For the 10th anniversary of Dothack Legend of the Twilight manga, so the manga came out in 2002, so this book came out in 2012, published by Ray Izumi. This is a self-published book. This is not done with CyberConnect 2, with Bandai, or Kadokawa. This was strictly Ray Izumi publishing this book. And it has some stories, comics, some mangas, illustrations, all kinds of things. It's a pretty hefty book, and it's a pretty nice find if you can find one. Earlier this week, one did pop up, and I shared it on our Discord, but there is no digital versions of this book that you can purchase online through any legit websites. I won't mention if there's any other non-legitimate sites, because that's not what we do here. But in this book, there is a short comic where we do see Uka before she was a werewolf. Now, this is her Knucklemaster class. You can see she has these spike bracelets around her wrists. And some of her appearance has altered a little bit. Mostly she's covered in bandages on her wrists and on her legs. She also has spikes, bracelets on her ankles. And she does have the werewolf ears on top and a little tail on her side. But she has the short little hair bob haircut. And you can't see it from this angle, but in other panels in the manga, you'll see that her tail on the back of her neck is actually pretty long. It comes from her hair, so it's just a long little ponytail that's in a really thin braid with a little fluff at the end. But unlike the werewolf class, she doesn't have her werewolf hands or her feet. So you'll notice she has little tiny human feet instead of the bulky werewolf feet that you'll see later on. So Knucklemaster, let's talk about that real quick. This was introduced, as far as I know, in this magazine, Dothack The World Volume 2. This is a magazine that was published by the same publisher who published Dothack Legend of the Twilight prior to Dothack Sign Anime at the beginning of 2002. It was the February 2002 magazine of Comtique magazine, where they introduced Dothack Legend of the Twilight for the first time. So in this magazine, which was a special edition of Comtique magazine, they introduce a tabletop RPG game, and that will be another topic for discussion at another time. One of the classes you could choose is the Knucklemaster. Here's one of two examples they showed. This Knucklemaster here, you'll see they have these two little boards that they're holding, basically to emphasize their fighting techniques. Now remember, a Knucklemaster is a fighter that uses primarily their fists, but not limited to their fists. Later on in the anime, we see Uka use her feet to attack monsters. Whereas all the other users, classes, they typically use swords, magic, or wands, but the Knucklemaster primarily fights with their fists. I don't remember off the top of my head this came out in terms of what year, but this is the first instance that I've ever encountered the Knucklemaster class for the tabletop RPG, which was called Dothack Infinite Generation. All right, so back into the 10th anniversary book by Rei Izumi, we definitely see Uka come in contact with the item necessary to transform from Knucklemaster into Werewolf. It's basically like, I'm not sure if it's supposed to be one ring or two rings that are coiled up, but it does have a little tail that's tied by a ribbon. And you'll see Uka here in her Knucklemaster form, and you'll see that long ponytail I was talking about coming off over her shoulders there. So when she collects this item, she decides to use the item right away, pretty much. And you'll see on the, remember, Japanese manga goes from right to left. So the right hand is when she was a Knucklemaster. You'll see that she's got like these fingerless gloves, the spiked bracelet, and the image on the left is her werewolf form. So the werewolf form has more of a brass knuckle type of accessory in her palms, and then her wrists has the werewolf type of fur material, and then the rest of her body starts to change. So that little tiny boa scarf she had around her neck becomes a full-blown boa that she has around her body. And this is the Uka that most people will remember from the manga. Now, that's another topic I want to discuss. I'm not here to talk about Uka specifically. I'm talking about the class. But if you ever notice, the manga version of Uka is not the same as the anime version. They've actually did some changes to the character. I guess I would assume to be more TV friendly, because this version probably wasn't that friendly at all for TV viewers. So the ponytail is gone. The tail on her side is gone. She gained the earrings. Her bandages mostly have become replaced with werewolf skin. She carries that big boa over her shoulders. And like I said, that was pretty much the first time we saw her transform. And on the top right there, you can see her with her werewolf feet. So in the anime, she has the ability to transform into a dog. And I believe this is also in the manga. But here you'll see, just looks like a regular dog type wolf creature. And Shugo, the main character, gets confused and assumes it is a dog in the game, because in real life he pretty much has a longing to have a pet of his own. But then it turns out that it was actually Uka in her werewolf form. Here she transforms into the character. So as you see, the design of the character in the anime has been altered versus what the manga had shown us earlier. So definitely a class that uses her full body, whether it's her fists, her legs, versus any type of actual handed weapon of any kind. So she has obviously stronger physical attacks. She's able to break bones just by squeezing it. And does a different type of combinations of attacks. But like I said, it is a class that you require an item from Knucklemaster to job change. Now, job change is not necessarily a new concept. We definitely had job changes later on with Dothack GU when Haseo does his quests in order to unlock his classes that he chose when he had created his Adept Rogue character. So here's Haseo as a Twin Blade, and then transforms into the Blade Brandier class. But what do you think? What are your thoughts on the Knucklemaster class and the job extension for Werewolf class? Remember, this is the 7th and 8th character class option you had during the World War I. Werewolf class obviously required more work put into it versus the Knucklemaster, where you could just choose right off the bat. And there's an interesting story about Uka, how she basically decided to start playing the world because of an accident during the, I believe it was the second network crisis, where I think it was she broke her leg. And when she created her character, she saw, your 6 main classes, which emphasis on wielding a weapon of some kind, but being in the mental state of, I've broken my leg and I kind of want to feel the need to use my body again, be able to walk and move and be free. And she decided to choose the Knucklemaster class in order to get that escapism in her life again. But would you choose a Knucklemaster class, or would you choose one of the primary 6 classes? And would you make the effort to go down the quest of obtaining that item necessary to become a Wave Master? Let me know in the comments, and if you like this video, be sure to give it a like, and let me know what you think about all the job change systems that were happening in the world, whether you recognized it or not. And thanks for watching.